A crazy heist for a golden treasure. And the start of President Trump's first full week in office includes a flurry of activity and perhaps a connection to the mob? Don't worry, we're going to explain. I'm Jenna, and this is Smarter News. Hard to believe that the inauguration was just a week ago. It feels like a lot has changed already, doesn't it? This is in part because of the pace and the quantity of news coming from the new administration. And that's absorbing a lot of the headlines for obvious reasons. New administration, new president, new action. But we have to be really careful with becoming distracted by action and keeping an eye on results. A lot of these executive orders I'm taking a step back from because presenting them publicly is one thing, seeing how they're applied is another. And this is just a reminder, executive action isn't law. It matters, but it isn't law. The president can do some things unilaterally, but a lot of the time he needs Congress and or favorable decisions from the courts, meaning his policies have to survive legal challenge, and that can take a little while. In the meantime, though, his executive orders can really have an effect. And we got a great example of this just over the last week and throughout the weekend. So President Trump ordered a tougher stance on those in the country without legal status. Some of those people were deported to the country of Colombia on a flight, and then Colombia rejected that flight. So then President Trump threatens tariffs. There's late night negotiations. Colombia and the White House announced some sort of agreement where Colombia is going to accept the return of their own citizens. So there was an end result to this. It did not require law. It actually required applying existing law. That's something that the president has been talking about. And it required posturing publicly in a way that got attention. So I'm just taking a critical eye to some of these actions. You're seeing President Trump making good on policy promises he made during his campaign. But he's also the author of a book called Art of the Deal. And some of what we're seeing could be opening negotiations. And as a member of the press, I want to be really careful about getting caught in the web of publicity and again, really focusing on substance. This is why the president's team really matters. So we start this week with a few more cabinet members confirmed, including the CIA director, the Secretary of Defense, and the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. More cabinet nominees are going to move this week, going to be part of the process. That includes RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kash Patel for FBI Director, and Tulsi Gabbard, who's been nominated for Director of National Intelligence. All of them are going to testify this week, or I should say all of them are scheduled to testify this week. So we really have a busy week in front of us on Capitol Hill. Because there's so much coming at you, though, I just wanted to focus on one big topic from last week that has a lot of public interest, and that is an executive order to release classified files related to the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and President John F. Kennedy. We're going to just focus on JFK because I found myself wondering why. Why did we classify so much of this investigation? Why isn't it more open? Why isn't it out in the public? And so we did a little bit more research on this. Politico actually mapped out some really interesting context, and I'm using this article as a source. It comes from 2022, but it still applies, and I'm going to put it in our show notes so you can check it out yourself. Here's some really important background. In 1992, Congress passed a law requiring the review and release of classified documents within 25 years, or by 2017. Remember, the president who was president at that time was President Trump. And Congress empowered the president to potentially waive that deadline. So in 25 years, if it just didn't feel right, the president had some power. And that's actually what President Trump did during his first term. He said essentially that it was too dangerous to release this information. President Biden took another look at this. He too set a deadline, and it came and went, and we still don't have anything. What is one of the reasons to keep it secretive? Like, what is this all about? Well, Politico says some people are still living that are informants, and releasing this information would give up some current sources and methods that could potentially be a risk. Okay, so why not just redact names? We see sometimes documents released and everything's redacted. So why not do that? Well, apparently it might not be good enough. One of the questions raised about the information related to the files on John F. Kennedy Jr., apparently there's some theories that there was a connection to organized crime. Some of this is theories, some of this is quote unquote conspiracies. I'm very cautious with that word conspiracies because that typically can refer to something that we know is not true. In this case, there's still a lot of unknown. And so there's been a lingering question about a connection to organized crime or to the mafia. According to Politico, I'm going to read this quote, of the nearly 7,500 documents that the FBI kept classified at the time of that 2017 deadline, 6,000 were from various files of members of organized crime. So that raises the question about whether or not the classified information is related to the crime specifically of Kennedy's assassination, or perhaps it's related to something bigger. Is there actually a bigger story here that for one reason or the other is being protected? What President Trump's executive action does, again, a lot of splashy headlines, is it actually requires another review. So it's not a magic wand. He's not a magician. Everything is not revealed. What it is doing is asking for another recommendation. So will we see it? We don't know. And this is just one way that executive actions both produce news, but may or may not move a story along. So it's just something to keep in mind. I'm going to leave you with this story, though. Speaking of crimes, there's this crazy story out of the Netherlands. It's a heist. And so listen to this. Thieves blew the doors off a museum in a remote part of the country and stole a gold helmet and some bracelets. The helmet dates back to 400 BC. And the story about this helmet is actually incredible. Apparently a child found it in the 1920s and was like using it as a toy or as a water pail for chickens before someone said, you know what, that actually could be valuable. And it's been held in this museum along with some bangles that actually sound pretty cute. Golden bangles with intricate engraved markings. So the thieves blast the doors off, steal these things early Saturday morning, and the museum director says they've seen nothing like this in 170 years. The museum's been around for a while. They have no leads, just a mystery. So if you see a intricate gold helmet or some fancy bangles in a flea market, maybe buy them and then call the FBI. You never know where these things are going to wind up. Who wanted them? Why did they want them? Why did they choose these items? A lot of questions here, not a lot of answers, but an interesting story coming out of Europe today. So just a heads up, we appreciate you. Thank you for your support of quick, concise, nonpartisan, smarter news. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you soon.